We repeat many times a day the words of the Holy Angel, one of the most powerful, sent from the bosom of the Trinity with a cosmic bit of news, the same one who came to Zechariah. The Lord was preparing already the way. And we say, Hail Mary, which the angel would have said, presumably in Hebrew, which would translate back as Shalom, Ish Kanach. Hail, or rather actually peace, which is the equivalent, that's their greeting, woman of grace. And he goes on with the same word being used in a different form. You have found now grace, or favour before God. This comes through in Greek, which is the language which we have of the Gospel before us, as chere, which is rejoice, and then simply one word, kecharitomeni, graced one. It's the participle of to grace, to favour in Greek. How does that come into Latin? We can't do it. There's no verb to grace in Latin, so it comes in this way. Ave, which is hail, greetings, and then full of grace. It's just a way around it. And that is what we have and what we repeat many times over. Repeating an angelic word. A grace to be asked for on this specific day, a big one, would be that of always saying the Rosary, which contains this prayer, with interiority. One of the saddest things in the Catholic Church is that many rosaries, many Hail Marys are said, but few oftentimes are prayed. And just think, if you get to the end of your life with all the Angeluses, all the Hail Marys, all the rosaries, all the devotions said from the heart, what a difference that would be. Grace, therefore, simply to ask for and to correspond with, for many go into automatic pilot. Now, the word has been looked upon by theologians over the centuries. What does it mean to be full of grace? The problem is this. She was on our side of the line. She was not God, she was not angel, she was humanity. As the poet Wordsworth put it, our fallen nature's solitary boast. She was bound to be, logically, prepared by the Blessed Trinity. It would make sense that something would specially happen in her case in such a way that the tabernacle of the Most High would be worthy of him. But the problem was this. If she's a son of Eve, or rather a daughter of Eve, going back therefore in original sin to the contamination that came from the fall, she too had to be redeemed. And it took a long time for this to come through, guided by the Holy Ghost, but actually it was because God was outside time, he could preempt, he could apply beforehand all the power of the redemption which happened on Calvary, and therefore apply it to this virginal womb, which therefore was pure. And that is a big one, because it means that at that point there was already an incipient break with the dominion of Satan over mankind. We forget the revolution that happened when Blessed Pope Pius IX dared, before actually the First Vatican Council, which declared what powers he had, any pope, to pronounce ex cathedra that this was a part of Christian dogma. And that can be seen, the fact that it was a great moment in history, from the way that in the chapel of the cathedra in St. Peter's, we have an inscription made referring to this event. Therefore, it was put there just after it happened. It was in 1854. Now, let's have a look at what's going on. You may remember that the intuition was already given to mankind in 1830 through, notice, a humble, hidden, young nun. Catherine Labouré was not yet fully professed. It was just information. And she was the one who at midnight was tapped on the shoulder by some angel, perhaps a guardian, and taken through the cloisters to the chapel where she met the Queen of Heaven in humble mode herself, quaint mode. And she was able to place her hands on her maternal knees and feel them. The seat where that happened is still there at the back. But then, what do we have? This medal. The medal actually of the Immaculate Conception, which became known as the Miraculous Medal. Ô Marie, conçue sans péché, ô Mary, conceived without sin, priez pour nous qui avons recours à vous. Pray for us who have recourse to thee. And it went round like wildfire, producing miracles wherever it went. When I was just ordained, I found my way to a place where something happened in that context. It was where a Jew, an anti-Catholic Jew, had been given this medal by a friend and put it on for whatever reason. And immediately afterwards, he happened to be wandering in Rome in a church which I knew, and Our Lady appeared to him and gave him straight away the knowledge of the true faith. And on that altar, still unchanged, St. Maximilian Kolbe celebrated his first Mass. So I asked if I could do the same with one of my first ones afterwards. It's very moving, actually. Our Lady did that, and then St. Maximilian was there, the unchanged Holy Sacrifice. And Our Lady, of course, appeared to him when he was very small and asked him which he wanted, the red one or the white one, these two roses. I'll take them both. And he was a martyr and very pure when he gave his life at Auschwitz. But then, the Holy Father, guided by the Holy Ghost, decided to put in print what was already thought, and actually secretly already thought in the East as well. But they don't define things as we do, they just believe it instinctively. Go to any Eastern city and you'll hear it all the time. They cross themselves 3 times, they get up and they go on. The All-Holy, the Panagia. They have very poetic words, in the feminine, of course, for Our Blessed Lady. And they pile on with the adjectives. So, Pope Pius XI defined that this was part of our faith, that she was immaculately conceived by this preemptive strike, applying outside time the merits of Calvary in such a way that too, yes, she was doubly redeemed because she was preserved also. And then notice another hidden servant came out of nowhere. Have you seen the Song of Bernadette? It's a very moving film. Some of the old black and white ones are far better than the modern ones, aren't they? I saw it actually when I was about 14, when I was still a Baptist, and I was uncomfortable. That can't be right. Or if it is, I'm not in the right place. So, she, at the age of, I think, 15, was taken when she was just collecting wood by the river, the Gave. We know what happened, we all know the story. But it's very quaint. She would not allow her to make the sign of the cross as she was going to. Her hand was frozen, and she had to be taught by the Blessed Virgin to do it with great dignity. We've been taught that as a novice in France, not doing the sign of the cross properly. I was supposed to want a big one to cover the whole body. And in the Carthusian life, one always makes the sign of the cross with a slight inclination of the head afterwards, out of respect for the cross. One also does it in the Eastern way, by the way. That's because these ancient things go right back, and they're shared between East and West. Well, she, at one point, asked her name, and gave her, because she'd been asked to, a bit of paper to write it on. And the Blessed Virgin simply smiled and said it wasn't necessary. But finally, on the 25th of March, she gave her name. And she made herself a humble daughter of the Church by taking up the very expression which Pope Pius IX had used several times in the definition, underlining its importance. Those two words, Immaculate Conception. Now remember that already centuries ago the Feast of the Conception was there in the calendar, in some places more than others, but it changed at that point and became, in our books, Concezione Immaculata. Now, she could hardly read or write. Her family was living in a discarded prison, le cachot, that's what it means, in Lourdes. And she is known to have said at one point that had the Blessed Virgin found someone more ignorant than she would have. Such was her humility. So Our Lady chose not the strong of the time. It was in 1858, therefore, that 4 years later, Our Lady endorsed this dogma, taking up the very title. We notice that she prefers the little and the humble. Another great Pope, Pius XI, on this day in 1933, proclaimed Bernadette saint. And he who was known to be very reserved in his reactions and controlled could not, at the end of the declaration, control his tears. His voice broke. The bells of 300 churches broke into full volley in the whole of Rome, and the church rejoiced to have one of her most humble daughters raised to the altars. At that time, 1933, Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany. Joseph Stalin had just had his first great purge. Benito Mussolini was meditating on the conquest of an empire and had this written on the walls: Solo Dio può fermarci, gli uomini no. Only God can stop us, men no. At the same time, in Japan, there came into power an emperor who seemed to wish for military conflict, power. Where are these great ones of the world now? We know the end of Joseph Stalin. We know the end of Adolf Hitler. But Bernadette is incorrupt, a pure virgin who could hardly read or write. And Our Lady did say to her, I do not promise you happiness in this world, but in the next. I wonder what will be the reaction of some of the great ones of this world to that promise. Now, this virtue is something that we need to look at on this day. Our Lady chooses those who have one thing in common with her. They are not full of themselves. Do you know that this is at the antipodes of the regime of the enemy of our Blessed Lady, the one who will be crushed by her weakest part, just the little foot. Lucifer was the most brilliant and became the most noisy, the most full of himself. I will not serve. Non serviam. I will not obey. This was reversed by that humble Virgin of Nazareth in the word fiat, which, by the way, in exorcism, the devil could not pronounce. A lot of things have come out in recent exorcism. There was one exorcist who was fairly keen on teasing out a certain number of truths. This is going back now not long, I believe it's in Italy. And he's managed to get out of the unwilling demons certain home truths. He couldn't, the demon, pronounce the word fiat. He just couldn't. He couldn't pronounce the word Mary, always got round it with some horrible circumlocution. But also, he was obliged to admit certain tactics that he has to destroy the one true church, for he knows that it's the one true church. It seems that he's pushing hard, forced immigration, and with it, a certain calming down of anything triumphant in the Catholic Church, in such a way that the virtues of Christianity are turned against it. I mean that courtesy for our guests becomes a weapon against itself, in such a way that bit by bit our courtesy will put us in a corner. I leave that one because it's too close to the bone and I might get into trouble. But Satan has admitted certain things. He has also admitted this, that his collaborators right now are also within the Catholic Church. What he's not able to do from without, he's got great helpers within. And he's been obliged to admit that certain theologians are doing his work within. So, have a sharp nose, my friends, a flair, the sense of the faithful, to be able to spell a rat. That bit can't be true. Ouch. I know, but I can't in some way say it, but my reaction says that's not of God. It's probably correct. I conclude, my friends. I mentioned that humility is at the antipodes of the regime of our enemy. But those who are in collusion with our enemy have some of his traits. One is that they're very noisy. Noise is actually a weapon in his hand. I put it simply. We have a choice. Our day is only 24 hours. If we choose to fill it with noise, we are choosing to have a certain bad quality of time. in which we're not available. We're not available. Our thoughts are someone else's thoughts aimed at us, either by a television or a transistor or a phone or a computer, or actually a music instrument which we can't turn off. Remember this: a choice can be as simple as one movement of the hand, a button. We can decide by one movement of a button to have noise and to be open to the pulpit of you-know-who. Or we can choose not, or simply to reverse it if it's on, to have engagement with the kingdom of noise. For humility is a silent virtue, and pride is extremely noisy. The noisy soul is not an interior soul. That soul invades other people, encroaches on their rights of life. I reign over you by talking loud at you. It hit me years ago when I was in formation not far from here, in the front. I happened to go down to the kitchen where our lovely cook, Josie, was not there at the time. She disappeared for whatever work reason, but had left the transistor on, which gave her courage to carry on. I thought, I have power over this kitchen and the whole refectory. I will dare to turn it off! And immediately, grace and peace returned to a noisy refectory where God could not be.